welcome to Real, brought to you by the That's Effin' Weird podcast network. At the beginning of each month, we will discuss the best movies of a given year, break them down, and study the impact on society. We'll start week 1 with the top 50 movies of that year as listed by IMDb, narrow that down to our top 3 favorites each, and then let our listeners vote on the best, which will then become our week 4 topic. To keep things interesting, while we will discuss the IMDb top 50 list, we are also welcome to choose anything from that selected year to enter into the listener poll. In weeks 2 and 3, we'll take turns and enlighten each other to our favorites of any genre of any year. If there's a week 5, well, all bets are off. I'm your host, Grindhouse Zombie, aka Brent, and joining me in the squared circle is Reverend Mike Snakebite, aka Clark. So, good evening, Clark. How the hell are you? How you been doing?
I'm doing well. I've been catching up on some That's Effin' Weird stuff, and basically just been enjoying life, watching some movies.
Outstanding. Seen anything good recently?
Good? No. Subjectively, no. Nothing good. but yes, I've been watching things.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme. Yeah, I've been trying to catch as many 2024s as I can, and there's nothing. Speaking with a friend of mine just very recently, we were talking about how a lot of last year's best movies, and specifically best horror movies, to be honest, really came out early in the year, and then the year got kind of flat. And this year is not off to a good start. I will say that the one film that really kind of blew my mind in terms of its content and how it was, let's just call it rated, was the movie Lisa Frankenstein. Now, it was rated PG-13, but the main character initiated or performed several acts of necrophilia during the movie. So I was questioning whether it should be PG-13 or not. I'm sure maybe I'm just the old school guy and I think a little differently, but that kind of freaked me out. Especially with the 8 and 10-year-old kids that were running around the theater trying to watch it with their parents. So it's like, oh boy. So maybe we've taken the artistic creativity limits and maybe pushed them a little too high, because that unnerved me a lot.
Well, maybe we'll go back one day and attack the actual invention of PG-13 rating, which was Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones. So, like, I guess if you can blend it, if you can make it seem almost comical, or not even comical, but kind of like hidden in adventure-esque stuff, then it gets the PG-13 rating. But I don't know what the rest of that movie entails, so I can't really judge.
Well, and if the movie had been good, I think I probably would have let it slide and just said, yeah, okay, it kind of is what it is. But it honestly wasn't even that good. So it just, that kind of made me disappointed and question my choice in movies, to be perfectly honest. Now, on the other hand, I did see the movie Out of Darkness, and that, from my chair, is the best movie I've seen this year. It was really phenomenal. I know a lot of people sort of tore it apart because, you know, it had a made-up language, and there was some other things in it that people really found a problem with. And to be honest, I don't know why they did, because the movie itself, to be honest, it has so many twists and turns in that it keeps you interested the whole entire time. But it really feels, from the movies of the last, say, 5 to 10 years, it's really a movie that feels like genuine peril. And I really enjoyed that. It really kept me interested and kept me watching. So, I don't know, maybe that'll end up on a list for us at some point. But, you know, I think we'll see. I don't really think there's anything else terribly exciting in the news of the film world, maybe other than 28 Years Later is supposedly happening, supposedly starring Cillian Murphy, and supposedly directed by Danny Boyle. So if all of that happens, that's going to be marvelous. That is, especially with Cillian Murphy and given his status and everything from Oppenheimer, if he comes back to reprise the role as Jim in that movie, I'm gonna cover myself in butter and salt and go to the theater and roll around on the floor and just be like, "Oh, this is so awesome!" I really can't wait.
I also find that fascinating, since the recent controversy about physical media. Have you heard that, about how 28 Days Later is no longer available to stream, and also all of the physical media has been printed, and therefore, if you don't already own it, that's the only way you're going to be able to see it now?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If what we're getting news-wise about this movie probably is not as new as we think it is, and this is very likely someone's marketing ploy to really ramp up um, the push for the marketing when the movie does come out. Because if you think for a second that there's not going to be a trilogy pack on a DVD or a Blu-ray shelf somewhere, I think you are fooling yourself. And I will admit that I'll be the first one in line to buy it, even though I don't honestly do much in the physical media world anymore. I spent years being a slave to it, and I got to a point where, I had thousands of VHS. I had close to 8,000 DVD / Blu-ray, and it was taking up so much room in my house. It was like, what am I doing? And kind of the same thing, to be perfectly honest, with CDs. And so I sort of went through a cleansing, and I cleansed myself of all but the most important things to me. Now, that said, in the last, say, 18 months, I've gotten into vinyl, and I'm starting the whole goddamn process over again. But I think that's just how it goes, right? Sometimes you just need to cleanse your life of the things that are weighing you down, and kind of move on to the next thing. But there has been a lot of talk about that. I know my friends over at Zombies Ate My Podcast, on their last episode, they talked about that, and how for their next episode they wanted to review 28 Days Later, and they couldn't find it anywhere. So yeah, it's a real thing. The why, I think, is probably up for some discussion, but it's an actual real thing. It's not streaming anywhere, and the physical media, unless you buy it on eBay used, you're not going to get your hands on it.
Yep, and that price is going to skyrocket now for at least the moment, until, like you said, until there's a trilogy release, maybe.
Yeah. No, and it absolutely will, and people will pay it because that's capitalism. So suck it up, Buttercup. It's just kind of how it is. All right, well, I think that's everything that I have that's fresh and interesting. Anything more from you, Clark?
Nothing new. Really, I'm kind of all invested in TV shows right now. I kind of want to, I'm about to check out Shogun that just came out. The history nerd in me is definitely going to tackle that. That's a Hulu exclusive. That's pretty much the main thing that's on my radar right now.
That looks very good. I had a friend of mine tell me about it and say it was completely worth watching. So you will have to, I've got so many things on my list, you'll have to give me some feedback as to whether I should slide that up to the top or not. I
will do.
I don't know why I did this to myself, but I went back and started Yellowstone over just because it's so damn good.
Oh,
it's just so good. And it's one of those things, when I started the first episode, say 2 years ago, and he had to shoot the horse, I turned it off, and it was like, I don't want to watch a show about people shooting horses. I just was too much for me. And once I finally got past that and was able to really take it, the rest of it, and digest it, it's just so good. It's the best storytelling. It's the best writing. It's the best characters. It's a shame that they've had so many problems with this this last season and trying to get things done, and between Kevin Costner and Taylor Sheridan, all these, and how's John Dutton going to get written off, and et cetera, and Taylor Sheridan saying, well, I don't do fuck you car crashes, which is kind of a jab at the Sons of Anarchy people, because they killed him in a fuck you car crash on that. So I really hope when they get back to it, especially if Kevin Costner's not there, that at least they keep the pace of the show going and something just ludicrous happens, because that's kind of where we're at now. We're definitely in ludicrous mode, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go from there, but that definitely second that show is absolutely amazing. I actually did not watch it for the first two or maybe three. I can't remember, season 3 that I started watching when I caught up. But my sister obviously is avid horse rider. She owns basically lots of horses and rides. She's been riding since she's older than me, but she's Yeah, she was 12, and she was actually like an Olympic alternate for dressage and things like that. Like she's been riding forever. So like I've been around horses and things like that my entire life, and she was just like, "Oh, I watched the show because I like the horses and stuff, but I think you'd really like it." And I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know. We'll get it." And then I finally watched it, and I was just like, "Holy shit! Why did I not watch this from the beginning?" And
Same for
yeah,
me.
definitely, yeah, that's a show that you just it blows your mind once you actually start watching it. You're just like, "Wow, this is really fucking good."
Yeah, it's some of the I don't stay current with TV. I'll admit that. I haven't had cable in like 12 years, so I don't stay current at all. So anything that I pick up, I'm usually 2 years behind anyway. And I do listen to the banter of the internet and the banter of my friends and things like that. Um, and it's funny. The best recommendation I got for this show was from my mother, of all people. And she's like, if they could just not, have the F word be every other word, I think it'd be perfect. And it's like, well, okay, that if my mother likes it, there's got to be something great about it because she does tend to like great TV. Now, I don't always like the subject matter of the things that she likes, but I'm not going to say that the shows still aren't great. So yeah, that's where my recommendation came from, and to me, it's still a little like I do it because my mom said so. Great, but hey, that's life. It is what it is.
Hmm.
Well, all right, everyone. I think it's time to get real.
The year was 1999. Europe welcomes the Euro, and Bill Clinton avoids impeachment. Shakespeare in Love wins the Academy Award for Best Picture, much to my chagrin and probably Brent's as well. And the Columbine High School massacre takes place.
A large tornado outbreak hits Oklahoma, with the largest, rated F5, killing 36 people. And the creation of Napster, the second golden age of piracy, has begun. Woodstock 99 takes place. It's widely considered a disaster, and the Izmit earthquake in Turkey kills more than 17,000 people.
The Ontario Highway 401 crash occurs, involving almost 90 cars and killing 8, while the Incheon bar fire in South Korea kills 56. China launches the first Shenzhou spacecraft, and Boris Yeltsin resigns as the president of Russia. Leaves Prime Minister Vladimir Putin, our favorite, as the acting president.
Y2K is looming large over the entire planet. What will happen when the clock strikes midnight? As it turns out, absolutely nothing. From here, we're going to start our breakdown of the top 50 movies of 1999 as listed by IMDb. Now, for some reason, IMDb only lists 47, so we're going to start at 47. Now, our philosophy here is, for me, if either A, you didn't see it, or B, you thought it really sucked, you can just pass on your commentary. So, starting out, number 47 on the IMDb top 50 list is Wild Wild West. Now, this movie, I'll admit, it's really fun. I really like the action. When I saw it, I thought it was pretty good. I tried to rewatch it a couple of years ago. It didn't quite have the staying power that it had back in the day. I think a little bit of the comedy falls flat. The we'll call it the expression of technology and what was possible back then is also a little bit far-reaching for me because I'm an engineer for a living, and some of those things they just couldn't have done.
Same here as a historian. It bothers me. Like so I had this is kind of a weird thing. It took me to watch anime to start suspending my disbelief on certain things. And this is one of those movies. This is one of those movies where I watch it. I can look at it now and watch it and just kind of like, okay, let my brain go for a second. Don't be a historian and just let it be fun. Like I get it. It's like proto steampunk is what the technology is kind of doing. And what's funny is actually the Confederacy, because this is like post Civil War, but the Confederacy actually did do a lot of kind of prototype steampunk kind of stuff. If you want to think about it, like they actually did try a lot of wacky weapons and things like that because they were desperate. and they're using the most they could do out of the materials they had. So I find it fascinating that it's kind of true, but yet no, they didn't make anything like that. They didn't have walking spider tanks, obviously. But this movie is kind of it was when I first saw it, I didn't like it. I saw it in theaters. I did see this in theaters. And I was kind of like, okay, that was just kind of dumb. It was playing off of Will Smith coming off of Independence Day in my mind and Men in Black. So he had just done Independence Day, Men in Black back to back, huge hits. It was Wild Wild West, and it's like, okay, that falls flat. And then I watch it later, but I still don't like it, but I don't like it for different reasons. I don't like it because it's not a good movie. I don't like it because it's not historically accurate. I can forgive the historical inaccuracies, but now I just hate it because it's not even fun anymore to watch.
All right, so not going to be in Clark's top 3. I think that's fair to say.
Nah.
Number 46 is Superstar. Never saw it. Even the poster makes me want to vomit.
Yeah, I had zero interest in this. This was an era of SNL that I had zero interest in, and yeah, sorry, no.
Well, apparently somebody had some interest, but it's pretty clear it was neither of us. Number 45, The Astronaut's Wife. Been forever since I've seen it. Don't really have an opinion on it. I know my ex-wife really liked it.
Never saw it. Is that Christian Bale though on the poster? Who is in that?
That is Johnny Depp.
Oh, okay, Johnny Depp. I have it in a very small screen, so I can't see. It's Johnny Depp. Yeah, never saw it though, but who knows? Maybe one day, just for giggles.
You never know. Number 44, Deep Blue Sea. Now, as a horror movie lover, I still like this movie. I've actually reviewed this movie on another podcast. This one, with the science, with everything they're doing with the characters, it's a movie that's held up over time. Is it going to be top 3? Unlikely. It's still good. It's still rewatchable. I put it on the short list of better to great shark movies.
Yeah, same here as a shark fan and a maritime in general fan. I like it. I like where they're going with the they don't really have to get deep into the whole science of it, but what they're going for, what they're trying to use the sharks for curing Alzheimer's and things like that. I like the idea behind it. So it kind of they don't go deep enough to shoot themselves in the foot. They kind of keep it on the surface enough to where it's kind of fun, and then just let it be a Predator horror movie. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fine like it is. It's not great. It's not cinema greatness, but it's fine for what it is.
It's an entertaining movie. I think we can just call it that. It's an entertaining movie. Okay.
And there's some good acting.
Well,
and not good acting, good actors. The cast
okay, good. Let's go with that. Good actors, yeah. Yes. Number 43, She's All That. High school shit. I hated high school shit when I was in high school. It does not, for the most part, ever intrigue me, draw me in. I think I've seen this. I could not tell you what it was about, and I couldn't tell you what I thought of it.
I have seen this more times than I would like to admit. And I will say, out of all of the high school rom-com, like, I don't know what you want to call those, like the pre-rom-com, because they're high school rom-coms basically. But out of all the ones, and this market was flooded in these years between 99 and 2001. God, there's a lot of them. There's several more actually probably going to show up on this list. I actually think this one is better. I think it's underrated. I think it's better than all but one of the same genre that came out this year.
Gee, I wonder which one that one is, Clark.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I don't recall a thing about it, so I'll tell you what. I will add it to my list of 9,000 movies that I intend to watch.
Fair enough.
Number 42 is Stuart Little. Now, not my jam, obviously. I'm kind of a horror movie guy. It's hard to not like Stuart Little. It's just a fun little movie. It's to use your phrase, it's not cinema greatness by any stretch of the imagination. But it's fun. I'm not gonna go too deep into it because it's definitely not one of my favorites. Um, it is one that my wife will put on every once in a while. And it's you don't walk away from it. It's a decent enough little movie.
Seen it in blocks. I can't really, I guess, comment on it too deep. I've seen it in blocks, but it seems like a movie from the heart, and I'll give it that.
Okay. Number 41, The Minus Man. Never saw it, but judging by the fact that it starred Owen Wilson and Cheryl Crow and Dwight Yoakam, I probably didn't miss much, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Never heard of it, honestly. This list is the first time I've ever heard of it.
Fair enough. Number 40, Mystery Men. Another one. No idea. Okay, sure. Why not?
Great cast. Has its moments, has some very good comedic moments, but largely, I think it is the victim of coming out at the wrong time. And this year is stacked with very good movies.
Okay. I'll go with that because I know nothing about it. Number 39, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Yeah, whatever. I just
Once again, not the only Shakespeare telling will be acting.
talk exactly. Yeah, and again, this is probably. I believe I've seen it. I recall very little about it. The cast looks very good, so might be another one of those victims of coming out at the wrong time.
I would seem so because that's all I can think of is it might be the third best Shakespeare movie that came out this year. Maybe fourth, actually. Hold on. We'll see when we get up closer. It might be the fourth one.
You might be right. You might be right. Okay, so number 38, Big Daddy. So this movie came out in the era of what I call acting like an asshole comedy. There was a lot of Jim Carrey acting like an asshole comedy in this era too. Given the fact that he's trying to take in a kid and trying to do the best, it talks about what you said, heart. This movie's got a lot of heart. It makes it rewatchable and makes it entertaining to me. Now, is it, a masterpiece of cinema? No. But Adam Sandler, from where he started, I mean, and let's be honest, some of his movies were truly funny. I mean, Happy Gilmore is truly funny. And I'm going to be 80 years old and still laughing at Happy Gilmore because it was funny. And it doesn't rely on a certain period or anything like that to maintain its humor. Some of his other ones, they were of an era, if that makes sense, and the humor falls a little flat. As I've aged, and this is going to sound terrible, and I make myself sound old as hell. Irreverent humor is starting to fall kind of flat for me, and I don't enjoy it like I used to. Big Daddy, I still enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's generally good across the board, and there's something to be said once again for the cast. It's a very good cast actually, and I don't know. Like I said, it banks on pulling the heartstrings towards the end, the second third of the third of the movie, I guess you could say. And then he tries to bank on classic Sandler humor for the first 2/3. But you can see he's growing. And yes, this is that transition period, 99. Like we're transitioning from here to the 2000s humor. We start getting the super bads and in the era of Will Ferrell and really Ben Stiller taking over and things like that. So, the passing of the torch to that kind of humor. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a good end of that era of Adam Sandler and him also growing and changing into what his future movies will be, which are, I mean, I hate to say it, he can just throw money at stuff right now and make whatever he wants. And it's, goes into his date movie era. This is where this is that transition to the date movie era where he goes to, all the murder mystery, which the murder mystery movies are good, and then
Well, those
and then
are a little more modern though, don't you think? Because I
that's what I'm
think of
saying.
like
Like, yeah,
the movie Blended. The movie Blended is actually a really good movie. You know,
yes, I just watched that for the first time this past weekend.
did you? Okay. And see, my
Yes.
wife and I saw that at the drive-in, and it was just the movie that was playing in between the two that we wanted to see. So it was like, well, we're stuck here. We both kind of went, wow, and it's kind of stayed on
Mhm.
our feel-good movie watch list. So, yeah, and
Yeah,
the
that
murder mysteries were good, but he's done
and
some
51st Dates
serious.
comes before Blended, so
Yep,
that's
yep.
like I said, same thing. This is the transition. I think this is the last of the Adam Sandler acting like a kid movie.
Yeah, I call
If
it
that
acting
makes
like an
sense.
asshole, but same thing. Yeah,
Right,
basically.
adolescent Adam Sandler movie. This is him putting that nail in that coffin, I think. So this is it. This is the last one, and then he
Okay.
kind of changed after this.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, outstanding. Number 37, Bowfinger. Never saw it.
Never had an interest in seeing it, honestly. The
Well,
trailer was terrible, and I think it just put me off of it from the beginning.
well, and Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy don't seem like a good combo in my head, just because I've been watching both of them for decades, and I don't see them working together well. But hey, what do I know? Number 36, we're finally getting to something that I'm going to say some things that are going to piss some people off, and that's where it's going to be fun. Number 36, The Blair Witch Project. Now, yes, I understand that this was pretty much the first really well received and kind of the starting point of the found footage horror movies. I get all of that, and I know what it did, and I'm glad it exists because it did that. That said, I believe it is one of the most overrated movies in the history of time. It just, to me, isn't that good. If I wanted to watch somebody stare into a camera and have boogers drip out of their nose, it's like I did that. I had 2 children. I did that already. I don't need to see that again. Wasn't particularly scary. It didn't scare me. And the thing that makes me the maddest with this movie is this movie coming out. I didn't get to see it in the theater, but it was the impetus for me buying my first DVD player for like $800, and you got to pick like 5 free movies when you bought the DVD player because they had a deal going on, and Blair Witch Project was one of them, and I was really disappointed.
Well, here's how I will describe the Blair Witch Project to me. And I did see it in theaters. But in retrospect, I will say that the Blair Witch Project is a beautiful sandwich with subpar meat. That meat is masked by the rest of the sandwich. The hero is not the meat. The hero is not the protein for once. And for those who like to cook out there, the hero is not the protein in this sandwich. So if the movie is the meat, I think that the marketing is an extremely beautiful, like homemade honey like bread. It's just like soft and flaky, and it's just amazing. And then I think that the theories that everyone have to like kind of make the story more interesting than it is like the sauce, like with a great pesto, and like just beautiful. And all this is just dressing up what is a subpar movie. The movie's mediocre at best, but what it did for found footage or even ideas of doing different stuff with horror movies, I think is important and it's undeniable. I think you just got to give it its place in history for that. And then the marketing, they knocked it out of the fucking park with marketing. And then, like I said, the legacy, the fact that people watch the movie, and because it's not that great, people have to make their own theories or make their own ideas up. Like the lore continues. It's been in video games. It got sequels. It has all this stuff because people wanted more shit from the Blair Witch universe when it really didn't need it. It didn't deserve it. It's just You know, it's just kind of there and it's dry and it's you got this dry meat slapped on a beautiful sandwich and the rest of it, all the accoutrements actually make it. And because that was so good, it makes you think like 10 years down the road, you're like, man, do you remember that really good sandwich we had? We should go back to that place. And you remember it's not really as good as it was but you're just remembering the nostalgia of it. So I think it hits it out of the park as far as that.
All right. The Blair Witch Project. Great sandwich, ruined by stale meat, but it had superb mustard. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 35. Stone ground mustard. Yes. So Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Oh,
now, because I could turn this into a whole episode, I'm not going to. What I can say about this is that I got to take my oldest kid to this in the theater, much like my dad took me to A New Hope in theater. So I have a connection to it that I cannot deny. Now, I've waffled over the years, and I've gone from this movie is the coolest thing ever to this movie is the shittiest thing ever. And now I've sort of settled somewhere in between where it's a respectable entry into the Star Wars zeitgeist. And especially after the last three came out, it got even more respectable, to be perfectly honest. But I don't want to go off for hours. I don't want to get into Jar Jar Binks. I don't want to get into all that shit. It's a respectable entry. It's rewatchable, even with the little gripes that I have. But a solid Star Wars entry.
Same here. I don't want to get off on a completely unnecessary tangent. If you want to hear a completely unnecessary tangent, please check out my old podcast, Hello Tangent, where I reviewed all the Star Wars movies in detail with guests, and you can hear my thoughts on that. But for the sake of this telling right now, I will say, yeah, soft spot, and definitely a soft spot, and I still don't consider it in the top 2/3 of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. If I were to take all the cinematic Star Wars movies that have been released in theater, it's not in the top half. But that's not to say it doesn't have a lot of merit and it's not important. It is important in the overarching story, and I still think that's what's important to watch Star Wars. You kind of just have to take the bad with the good and kind of enjoy it for what it is. And it's kind of a romp. And yeah, we can be old crotchety adults now and not like some certain things, or even not like the things when they came out. I mean, I was 14 when it came out. So I was kind of excited for the first time because I just got into Star Wars when the special editions came out. So like I was 13, 97 is when I got into Star Wars, and 2 years later I get a new Star Wars movie and I get to see it in theaters for the first time. So yes, it is exciting for me. It's I always have that connection to it. But is it one that I'm going to put on if I want to watch a Star Wars movie to kill some time? No, absolutely not. It's maybe the 7th one I would put on. So I think that's the best I can say.
Okay. Misa think Clark don't like Star Wars.
Star Wars. You know, select Star Wars.
Oh God. Okay. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. So Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace at number 35. Yeah, we understand how important it is. We both love it for our own reasons. We both hate it for our own reasons. We'll just leave it right there. 34, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Now, this is another one of those kind of irreverent comedies that back in the day, I loved it. I loved it. And now that I'm older, and I don't know if I'm just more in tune with society or just kind of the things that were happening in this movie, but I watch it now and a lot of it is just straight up cringeworthy. Just like, ugh, like this is like if I was at work and I said that, I'd get fired. I get it's a movie, but I think the type of comedy that this was over time, it got stale. And it really doesn't have any staying power because I wouldn't want to be friends with a person that treats women like this. I just wouldn't. And if I were to throw this on and say, hey, to my wife, hey, honey, you want to watch this? She would just go, no. And she would just leave the room. So that's kind of a piece of it too. Yeah, just not a ton of staying power for me. And it's a reverence on like a filthy scale, maybe is the word I'm looking for. Not something that I'm ever going to go back to.
So I'm going to give this one a little bit of a positive credit here, only because I think that as a sequel, it did a good job of opening up or kind of loosening up from the first one. I think the first movie, International Man of Mystery, kind of took itself very seriously. And I didn't like the first movie I didn't watch when it came out. I didn't get the humor. It was kind of past me at the time. I was like, came out in 97, I believe. And I just wasn't in a mental state to understand that kind of humor at that point. When this movie came out, it made me want to go back and watch the other, and then I kind of understood it better. But you can see a very distinct change from International Man of Mystery to this movie, and then you can see a distinct change from this movie to Goldmember. And I think they got looser, and they had more fun. They got funnier as the movies went on, because like I said, the first movie seems very stiff. This movie, I actually give credit for being funnier and being better, because everyone seems looser. Everything flows better. Even the accents change. Like you can hear like Dr. Evil's, like he starts to get a little, get less stiff and more loose in the whole accent and like having fun with it. So I feel like it was like hitting a stride. And then Goldmember is the best of the trilogy, which is very rare to say that the third movie in any trilogy is the best one. I will actually say Austin Powers Goldmember is probably the best of the three movies. So I think this is kind of a stepping stone. I think it's better than the first, and I think Goldmember is better than this one.
Okay. Yeah. Again, for me, the irreverent humor got a little dry. It's I haven't watched this for a couple of years. Maybe if my wife is out of town and I can just watch it and not have to get the eye roll sitting next to me, it's probably a lot funnier. But not a date movie, in my opinion. But funny, yeah, probably. I'll have to give it that. It's funny, and I think you're right when you say that there probably was some, call it some character development or some character growth over the movies. And just some of the one-liners, just in that thing, like, on the whole, I think Preparation H feels great. I mean, okay, some of that shit it's just funny because it's funny. And if you don't laugh at it, well, then maybe you're dead inside. So, yeah, you know what? Hell with it. I'll give it a pass. We'll call it a decent comedy from the late 90s.
I think it went from a James Bond parody as it grew into its own thing. I think they took themselves so seriously in the first movie. The second movie was kind of an opening doors. And then by the third movie, they're like, everybody gets it. It's its own thing now. Let's just have fun with it. So it kind of broke out of what it was. It was a parody to begin with. And then it found a way to break through that ceiling and actually just become its own funny thing.
Okay. Well, I'll call that one fair enough, because the next movie, I think in a way, is also a parody. And despite the people in it, it sort of bugged me, and I'll enlighten you as to why. So number 33 on the list is Analyze This. And it's a comedy about a psychiatrist whose number one patient is an insecure mob boss. Well, where else did we see that in the late 90s? I can't remember. What could... Oh, yeah, The Sopranos. Okay, so all the actors in this movie I like Chaz Palminteri. I have got a soft spot for him and everything he's ever been in. I don't know why. I just love him. But this was a direct ripoff of The Sopranos. I mean, it could not have been any plainer. And it did well at the box office. It made a lot of money. I'm guessing, Robert De Niro had something to do with that. But I just didn't think it was as funny as a lot of other people did. It just maybe the humor was lost on me, but I just didn't think it was as funny. How about you, Clark?
I tried to watch this one. Like I not like tried as in I put it on with the intent of watching it. Like it was like, oh, this is coming on HBO or whatever, and I was like, I'm gonna watch some of it. Yes, once again, the cast I love. I'm kind of curious because I have not looked into this, but I believe like did Billy, other than Analyze That, the sequel, was this the last time Billy Crystal has been on camera? Because he's, he went into directing and producing after this. So this is like one of the last times I've seen him like on camera. I find that fascinating. Yeah, I haven't thought about it really, but now that we're talking about the movie, I think this pretty much is one of the last times I saw Billy Crystal actually in a movie.
Saw him, yes. Has he been doing things still? Yes, he has been. He's done TV, movies. So he's still very, very active. And I know that he's got something coming. I'm going to see if I can find it. Yeah, it does not say here. He has got something coming, I believe. There's supposedly a sequel, maybe not a sequel, we'll call it a follow-up to Throw Mama from the Train with both Danny DeVito and Billy Crystal in it. And it's tentatively titled, if I read this okay, it was Throw Papa from the Train. So I mean, come on. Throw Mama from the Train is a spectacular movie. It is spectacular. I mean, it is as close to as movie perfection as you can get without trying to be a serious movie that wants to win awards. It is flawless. So I hope that happens. That would be super fun. But I am getting off topic, and I should not do that. So yeah, Analyze This. Just meh.
Yeah. Meh.
Yeah. Number 32, Cruel Intentions. Now, when you just say in the description, elite Manhattan prep school, I've pretty much already punched out. Like I don't care. I remember the movie, but it seems like it's another one of those movies where it's a bunch of rich assholes fucking with people because they can, and it's like you're not gonna get me with that. You just aren't. It's not that interesting, and yeah, I'm just not gonna say any more about it because I would just start ripping it to shreds.
In retrospect, so retrospective Clark says that nobody talks the way they talk in this movie. There's the dialogue is complete bullshit. Like 17-year-olds don't speak like this, no matter where you grew up or what your monetary background is, whatever highfalutin prep school you go to, nobody speaks this way. So that's my first thing that I will call out on it. Second, the movie itself is actually kind of fun. I mean, I actually enjoy the movie. It's really not bad. But if you start looking at it too critically, yes, you start thinking of things like that where you're like, no 17-year-old talks like this. And then 14-year-old Clark, going back to that, Sarah Michelle Gellar, oh my God. She's hot in this movie.
See, I've always been a Reese Witherspoon fan, so same reasons, different actress, but yeah. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay, so nothing great to say about that one. I think that it's when you break it down and it's like it had a hot actress. Well, it kind of tells you what you need to know. Number 31, Bicentennial Man. I don't recall having ever seen this.
I watched it. It tries to pull on like the melancholy strings, but it just doesn't get it done. I never really felt that sad watching it.
Okay, so that's a solid meh from you then.
Yeah, it's really not. I mean, Robin Williams is like, you trying to make Robin Williams play a robot? What are you doing? Like, he's the opposite of a robot, literally. He's the most animated person on the planet, and let's make him a robot. Yay.
So terrible casting is what you're basically saying.
Yeah, they probably could have done. I mean, I get why they chose him because they're like, hey, let's have a robot. What if a robot could have emotion? Yeah, you're gonna like, but at the same time, because I guess any other actor, serious actor, would have looked just literally metal or wooden the whole time and not able to put any heart or life into a robot. So I guess by having Robin Williams in there is like giving warmth to what is actually a cold robot. So I get that, but at the same time, yeah, you're holding back one of the best comedic actors of all time.
I'm okay with that. I think that sums it up. Now we're getting on to number 30, and we're finally starting to get into some meat here. I think where we're getting some movies that are, at least for me, are really going to start striking a chord. So number 30 is Any Given Sunday.
Yes.
Now, for me, so I have shed the smallpox covered blanket that is the NFL from my body, and I no longer participated on Any Given Sunday. I've taken my Sundays back, even from NASCAR, if you can believe that. But when I need a dose, it's cold in my basement, Clark. If I need a dose of football, like a hardcore dose of football, Any Given Sunday is my go-to football movie. Now, I know people will argue that there are probably better ones. And I could argue that all day long. Any Given Sunday it's a brilliant movie, and it's brilliant on a lot of facets. It's brilliant because it shows you the players and what dicks they can be. It shows you the owners and what dicks they can be. It shows you that there are people that sacrifice everything for this one thing, and ultimately how little it brings back to them, but they still sacrifice anyway. It's just a great movie. Just hands down a great movie. There's really nothing else to be said. It's just great.
Same here. I saw this in theaters and I was blown away. The cast is amazing. Al Pacino, Cameron Diaz, Jamie Foxx, even LL Cool J, and I mean Lawrence Taylor plays a football player, and he is a football player in the movie. Like the people, the cast is just amazing. Actually, there's a lot of people are actually ex-football players in this movie. It's incredible. But yeah, I would say top 5 favorite sports movies ever. But there's 2 other that came out this year that are also arguably in my top 5 favorite sports movies ever. It came
This
out
year?
the same year. Yeah, in '99.
The same year. Okay.
Yes, so it's kind of scary to think that 3 of them. I could argue that this was me in my top 5 favorite sports movies ever, but I know there's 2 other sports movies that came out this year that would be in top 5 and definitely in contention, and maybe ahead of this. So it might be proper ranking where it is. But Any Given Sunday, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, it was shocking to me when I saw it, and it was kind of funny because like the eyeball scene, like when the guy gets his eye, like it showed the grittiness and like crazy. It got kind of bloody for a while, and like also Cameron Diaz was a bitch in this movie, and it was kind of the first time she actually like was a bad guy ever. So I kind of find that funny. Like she played a quote unquote villain, I guess you could say, or an antagonist in this movie, and so I found that fascinating. I was just like, wow, it's kind of crazy to see her. Like you grew up, I saw her in The Mask, and you see her in all these movies. Like there's something about Mary and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden she's like this kind of domineering, kind of like hardcore corporate bitch and everything. And I'm like, God, it's like, man, it kind of flipped the script on us literally. Where I was just like, wow, she's different. so I found that fascinating. I mean, yeah, it really kind of turned your mentality on some of these actors and stuff. And then and it was just very real, very raw movie. So I don't want to go too deep in it, but I do love this movie. I can watch this anytime. If it's ever on, I will literally put it on and watch it because I think this is a great movie.
Yep, absolutely. So back to our comedy genre, number 29, American Pie. Now, this movie, I think, it sort of reinvigorated the teenage R-rated comedy genre. There had not been a ton of that, and kind of goes back to your talking about the PG-13 rating and when it was introduced. There really hadn't been anything like this since probably Revenge of the Nerds or maybe even the Porky's days, where we just had guys, their goal was to get laid, and when all was said and done, they understood that there was maybe a higher purpose to the whole thing. But this is teenage sexual angst at its finest. There's just no other way to describe it. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of the follow-ups are also very, very good. And it's almost kind of rare to get a set of characters and to meet them in high school and through over the course of a decade, watch them grow and see what they become in their films up till, you've got a point where one of them's getting married, and it takes, American Wedding takes a little bit of the teenage hijinks out of it, but it also shows you that despite your best laid plans, things can still go to shit if you're not paying attention. So I'm an admitted fan of the whole series. But this one really kicked it off, and it did a masterful job of showing how much it can suck, but also how fun it can be to be a teenager.
Yeah, I think this movie also, to compare it to the horror genre, so we can, bring it back to our wheelhouse, I would say, once again, I think there's something about Mary in '98 kicked off the modern kind of shock, dirty humor stuff, like Not Afraid to Show prosthetic stuff, where it be, cross into sexual humor and things like that and push limits. I think that was like that resurgence, and American Pie definitely rides that coattail. But having said that, I will also say this is another comedy similar to Austin Powers, where I say the sequel is superior. And it's rare for comedies where you say the sequel is superior. But I think that actually American Pie 2 is better than this movie. I think this movie is aged worse than the second one.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm a firm believer in that.
Well, we're going to have to, some month where we have a fifth week, we're going to have to factor in a Pie retrospective then. Just to break these down. Interesting. I guess I wouldn't have gone there with that, but I respect what you're saying. So as not to dwell on the pie and who may or may not have had intercourse with said pie, let's move on to number 28, where we've got Three Kings. Now, I've seen this movie. I know what it is. It's got a pretty impressive cast. It's a really weak entry. It's just not a good movie. It's just not. And to capitalize on what at the time, I mean, because at this point, America's only been in the Iraq War for 7 or 8 years. I thought the timing was bad. I thought the subject matter was bad. I mean, we're here to pillage the treasure of the people of. I mean, it just was it. It felt really flat to me, and a little piece of it, because they were effectively stealing from those people. It was just, I don't want to call it insensitive, because I'm not usually somebody that talks about things being insensitive, but it was just like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me here and why any of this is a good idea.
So yeah, this came out just before the quote unquote Forever War, but was based on a myth or slash story from the first Gulf War of finding like all this hidden, treasure and all this stuff. And what I find interesting about this movie is it could have been good. This is the biggest tragedy, is it could have been good. The problem is that the whole production of this movie, and I encourage anybody listening to go look up production of this movie and all the problems it had. It was a complete shit show. Director, actors, no one getting along. Like George Clooney literally knocked out the director, literally punched him in the face, knocked him out for abusing someone on set. Basically, I think it was a boom mic handler or a gaffer or someone like that. Yeah, he said, if you yell at someone, I'm going to hit you. And he literally yelled at someone on set, and George Clooney knocked him the fuck out because George Clooney backed up his word. And it was like, yeah, I can't remember which Anderson it is that directed it, so I don't want to misspeak because there's too many. There's Paul W.S. Anderson. There's too many Andersons, so I don't want to misspeak on this
The
one.
director was David O. Russell. That was the director.
Oh, David O. Russell, that's it. Who also yelled at, he's gotten in multiple. There's a lot of screen testing arguments you can see with him with a lot of actors. That's what it was, David O. Russell. And George Clooney basically told him, he's like, if you yell at anyone on set while I'm on set, I'm gonna fight you. And he basically tested that, and George Clooney definitely backed it up and knocked him out. And they apparently didn't have a problem from then on. But so kudos to George Clooney.
From what I mean, that was the most interesting part of that movie. So
there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of tension in that movie, and that's why I don't think it also came off. But the story, the idea, all that stuff, the script, I think it could have been better with the right if it was in the right hands. And I don't even think the cast was the problem. I just think there was too much tension and too much behind the scenes crap going on. Having said that, no, it's really kind of a boring movie to watch.
Agreed. So our number 27 is The Mummy. Now, I'll tell you what, it wasn't until just maybe the last year or so that I really realized that The Mummy is actually kind of a horror movie. And I don't know why it took me that long to realize it. This was another one that I reviewed for another podcast. And without getting super deep into it, the characters, the story, the mythology that they bring in, and I'm sure that Clark's History of Ambulance is going to come up here and tell me how inaccurate it is. But it's just too fun. It's too fun. The characters are too likable. The enemies are too likable. Everything about it is likable. You watch this movie and you're glued to it the whole time. You're never bored. The development of the characters, even from the lady archaeologist to the bad guy that wears his little fez all the time. I mean, everybody is interesting. Everybody's fun. And then how can you not be okay with like the perceived end of the world? I mean, that's just right there. You've got me. But anytime there's going to be an apocalypse, I am there. Butter the popcorn, pass me the salt. Let's rock. And I'm going to sit there for the whole thing. I love it. Really, really, really good movie. Very rewatchable. A couple of the sequels are not too bad. A couple of them are garbage. It just kind of is what it is. One of those not times where the sequel was better because the sequel was not better. But almost at this point, this movie is almost iconic, really. And Brendan Fraser and like his resurgence with The Whale recently has been really fun to see because that movie is fantastic. If anybody hasn't watched The Whale, I mean, bring some tissues and whatever you take as an antidepressant and sit down and just be ready because you're going to need it. That movie's fantastic. But it's great to see him in an early movie before I think he very unceremoniously got roped into the let's put you in a dopey comedy movie. And I think that killed a lot of his quote unquote acting career because this was phenomenal.
Yeah, this zero complaints and not even touching on history or anything like that. This is the most feel-good movie like ever. Possibly. Like this I put this in the realm of watching like Back to the Future or any kind of feel-good movie that you can just have on an afternoon, like a Saturday where it's like, oh, I just did all my errands, I vacuumed the house, I just need to sit on the couch for a second. Oh, The Mummy's on? Hell yeah, that's going on while I do stuff. Like I can have that as background noise and I can watch it and I can not watch it if I need to. Like it is absolutely everything. The effects hold up. All the acting holds up. It's peak Brendan Fraser. It's just, zero complaint. I think it's criminal that it's at 27. I get it. This is a stacked year for movies. That's why we're doing it. But criminal that it's at 27. This movie is easily, criminal. It's easily in a feel good in a movie that you just. Do you not want to feel bad for yourself? Put on The Mummy. Jesus Christ. Like top 10 feel good movies ever.
Oh, so I think we might have our first potential top 3 for Clark. Maybe.
It's clawing. It's clawing at it. It's trying to dig its way in.
Okay, that's interesting. So first potential top three. I myself have not had one yet because I've seen the list and I know what's on it. Um, but I could see it too, and it would be interesting to discuss. So number 26, Arlington Road. Now, I recall the movie. Again, a pretty stellar cast, but it didn't stick with me for some reason. So I'm not even. I don't feel competent to even discuss it.
Yeah, this is a pass for me. I did not see this.
Okay. Number 25, The Virgin Suicides. Now, when I was young and I was angsty and all those other things, I loved this movie. I watched it within the last maybe 2 years. And to be perfectly honest, it is so fucking bleak. I don't ever want to watch it again. It made me feel bad for days. And while I appreciate that a movie can make me feel a certain way, when it makes me feel like crap for days on end, yeah, it's not something I need to rewatch. Again, spectacular cast, for the time. And anything with Kirsten Dunst in it, you've kind of got me at the front door. But this was just, it's hard to watch now. It's just hard to watch. I just don't need, and as much as I love horror, this is a whole different level of bleak that I just don't need in my life.
Yeah, same. It's just not fun watch. I'm not saying it's a bad, but it's also like, yeah, I get what you're talking about. Like, you have to be in that angsty mood where you're just like, I'm so hard, I can watch this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm brooding. And that's what it is. You just have to kind of go into it with that mentality. But, you know, I can, it's the same people, if you want to watch gore videos, go do it, whatever.
Yeah, just
So
what place? Yeah, what place does it has in my life today? And
exactly.
for that one, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not proving anything to anybody. Watch it, whatever. If you like it, cool. You're not reading any like magical like meaning to life in it. So you're not, if it had something that you pulled away from it where you're just like, wow, I learned something cool, but you don't really learn anything. It's just depressing.
Agreed 100%. So on to number 24, and kind of at a little past our theoretical halfway point, even though we were at 47, is Notting Hill. I don't think I ever saw this, and just even looking at the poster, it's another one of those things where it'd just be like, nope, no reason.
Never cared.
Never cared. All right. Number 23, Election. Now, this movie I really do like. And I like it for a number of reasons, but probably the primary one is to see somebody that's that age and is, so hell-bent driven on accomplishing something that in the grand scheme of things doesn't even fucking matter. And the teacher, Matthew Broderick, he just plays that part brilliantly. That's so fun to watch. All of the stuff with him and his wife trying to get pregnant, and then, how his buddy leaves his wife, and now he's all over there. He's helping the other lady, and I mean, it's a lot of this boils down to real world situations that you could be put in, and what would you do? And that's kind of why I like it, because it makes you question yourself, and for me, it's kind of rare to have a movie making me question myself and what I would do.
I never watched this movie. Is this also Kirsten Dunst? Wasn't she in this? I thought she was in this as well.
I don't believe so. It's Reese Witherspoon.
Oh, Reese Witherspoon. That's right. I just remember the poster like vaguely. I remember Matthew Broderick, and I just remember a blonde. So yeah, that's my mistake on that. But no, I never watched this actually. So maybe I should check it out.
This movie makes the best out of everything that it has, up to and including a bee sting. So it knows when to laugh at itself, and it knows when to take things seriously. And of that 2% of time where it makes the mistake of, oh, I should have taken this seriously and I should have laughed at this, and it didn't, it just makes it that much better. Yes. So by all means, add it to your list. Not going to make my top 3, but it's probably going to be, it would be in my top 10 for the year for sure.
That's
moving
impressive.
moving on to number 22, Sleepy Hollow. Okay, so before Clark pulls out his historical ambulance, because I know you will at some point, I just know it. Um, Obviously a horror movie, so I just by default either have to love it or hate it. It's one of the ones that I love. The story of Ichabod Crane. I mean, come on, everyone knows the story of the Headless Horseman. Um, a fun movie, well acted, a very good period piece. Not something I can rewatch. I've got to be in a certain mood. But when I'm in a certain mood, it fills up the plate very, very nicely.
I love take on this story. As obviously Washington Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I like this take. I like this version of it. I find it very funny that it's kind of setting up future, even though this is different actors. Was this Tim Burton that actually directed this one? I can't remember.
Yes, it was Tim Burton.
That's what I thought. So Tim Burton directs this one. I like how they do like random flashbacks, like to like his mother and all that kind of stuff, and the witch connections and all that thing. I like that. A couple years later, he will do From Hell, which is the Jack the Ripper story, and it's based on a graphic novel, not directed by Tim Burton. But I compare these two movies a lot, and I like From Hell a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, that's the only reason I think that movie gets overshadowed in my own mind is because I compare it to From Hell all the time, and it's just like, I like From Hell a little better. But no, if I'm just doing it in the vacuum of 1999, there's a lot of great movies that came out. But once again, this is a movie I saw in theaters, and I still enjoy watching. I think it's very beautifully shot movie. Obviously, it has some of the Tim Burton quirks. It's a little crazy at times, like the gizmos and gadgets or whatever he uses, like the weird, like his monocles and stuff like that to look at, autopsies and everything. It gets a little silly, but ultimately, no, it's actually a good movie. I got no complaints with it.
All right. So number 21, Tarzan, animated movie from 1999. So at this point, I am 25 years old. I do have a 5-year-old kid, so an animated movie would have made sense. But we were still in that place where The Lion King ruled our household. So I honestly don't think I ever saw this, just because The Lion King was just too popular and was just still holding its own as the, animated feature du jour of the time. So I can't really say much about it.
Same here. I was very caught up in the Renaissance era of Disney. So Little Mermaid through Pocahontas. It's kind of my wheelhouse. Mulan was the late comer where I kind of was done with the animated Disney at that point. So Mulan, I would say, would be the last of that era. And then Tarzan came out. I will say, being a music person, Phil Collins obviously did the majority of the soundtrack for Tarzan. There's some very, very good songs on there. So I'll give him that. But as far as the movie itself, I didn't really have an interest in it.
All right, fair enough. So number 20, another angsty movie, Girl Interrupted. Now, this cast, Winona Ryder, Angelina Jolie, Cleo Duvall, who I think is a very underrated actress. I really believe she's very underrated. And then Brittany Murphy, who is obviously no longer with us. Another one of those, if you're feeling pissy or angsty or you want to punch the world in the mouth, yeah, it's a pretty good movie. Overall, it's too bleak and too depressing to want to just throw on for the hell of it. It's not. It's deep and introspective and talks about a lot of serious topics. I mean, but not something that I would throw on just because I feel like a movie.
Yeah, good movie. There's some extremely good acting in this movie, and like you said, also though, I think that some people watch this movie and they like I've seen people like dress up for Halloween and stuff doing it. Like it's become like a resurgence popularity thing, and it's just like, did you get the meaning of the movie, or are you just like enjoying it because you're angry and you're female? It's like don't do that. Don't dress up as a Halloween costume for it and not get the point of the movie.
Well, that's always hard because I think that
And by the way, I am not knocking this strictly for females just because this is a female centric movie. There will be a movie later that we're going to talk about that I'm going to talk shit about, and it's a male centric movie. And you're already smiling because you know what it is.
I do know what it is. I do. Yeah,
And a lot of people miss the point of that movie too. So I'm saying let's just not miss the point of movies. There's an artistic value to some movies, and we shouldn't just make Halloween costumes out of them.
Well, and as much as I agree with your point, I also think that people are welcome to take away whatever that they want to take away from a movie. And so I'm never going to hammer on them for that. And I knew that there's a lot of movie there's an artistic point, or there's a view that is trying to be expressed. But I think because people are different, everyone takes things a little differently. I know with this movie in particular, I've got a good friend of mine who does, we'll just say, psychiatric work. And her opinion of this movie is, I mean, she would call it destructive, encouraging negative behavior. I mean, she says all these things about it. So kind of depends on where you're coming from, I think, ultimately. For me, I wouldn't rewatch this one just because. And I think that's what I'll just have to stick with.
I'll do a horror movie comparison, since that's how we bring things back home sometimes.
Bring it full circle. All right.
Right. How many times have you been to a haunted house and you've seen someone wearing a hockey mask, like in a jumpsuit with like a bloody hockey mask, and they have a chainsaw?
Every single haunted house I've ever been to ever.
Right. So what horror movie villain is that?
It depends on how much you want to mix them. I mean, if it's
exactly. Is that Michael Myers wearing the jumpsuit? Is that Jason Voorhees wearing the hockey mask, or is that Leatherface holding the chainsaw? Because none of those three characters do any of that.
Okay, so I guess I get your point. When you take certain things and then you decide to hodgepodge them just in the interest of space in your haunted house, it doesn't make it a real thing. Fair enough.
That's how I feel about movies trying to tackle psychological issues and things like that, and then people taking that away from it and then making their own thing. Like it's like that's how I interpret that.
All right, good enough. I see your point. Number 19, 10 things I hate about you. Be perfectly honest, I don't think I've ever seen this, and just another one of those where the poster just makes me go, nope.
So this is the second Shakespeare story on the list. This is actually a reinterpretation of The Taming of the Shrew, and it's actually done extremely well. And this is why I said this is better than She's All That, and I think it's better than our earlier Shakespeare. Was it Tale of Two Cities? Yeah.
Interesting. So, well, shit. Now I have to watch it. Damn it. Okay.
You do. It's actually not bad. you should probably watch it.
It's going on the list. Okay. All right. Well, all right. We'll leave that one at that. Number 18 is The Man on the Moon. And that's obviously the life and the story of Andy Kaufman. Now, everything that I know about, so I've seen this movie, and it was okay. It didn't keep me super interested the whole time. And like everything that I've read about Andy Kaufman is that, I mean, if I break away all the artistic and creative things, I mean, for the most part, like if I were to meet him in real life, I'd probably think he was a douche. So it's hard for me to have even a little love for it. The movie itself was pretty good, though. It was pretty good. It was not great. This not something I'll ever watch again because I have no desire to see that rehashed. But the subject matter basically turned me off. So it's like, what do you do with that? You watch it to say that you watched it, you form an opinion, and then you move on.
Yeah, this is a time when biopics had not taken off like they did in the mid 2000s yet. So I think that's one thing that maybe hinders this movie. Second is obviously tumultuous production. Jim Carrey went method acting on it and kind of upset a lot of his fellow actors. Uh, and yeah, just in general, like the controversial nature in general. Um, I don't know. Like I said, it's not a bad movie. I enjoy it for the most part, but I don't really have like a strong opinion on it, other than the fact that it's named "Man on the Moon," and that was because the REM song uses Andy Kaufman
Yep.
in the lyrics, and I thought that was a very strange choice. There's
It's
not any. There's no other
doesn't
connection.
doesn't tie it together really well. It's not.
Yeah, there's no
It's
other
a pop
connection.
culture. It's like a pop culture reference versus an actual
Right.
reference to the guy's life. Yeah. No, I would agree with that statement. Okay. Well, we'll leave that there. Number 17, Galaxy Quest. Um,
The best Star Trek movie ever.
uh,
Go ahead
uh,
and say it. I'm gonna cut you off and just go ahead and say it.
okay.
What,
Okay. Well, we'll just
anytime,
leave it right there.
anytime,
Then the best Star Trek movie
anytime
ever.
anytime someone asks me what's the best Star Trek movie, I say Galaxy Quest.
I can't top that, so I'm just gonna bump right on because you're probably right. Number 16, The Talented Mr. Ripley.
You want me to go?
Yeah,
Boring.
do please. Boring. Okay,
Boring.
that's yes, boring. It another one of those movies where it could have been really good. Like it
Yes.
could have been.
Could have been
You have a
so boring.
yeah. Well, you have a slate of excellent actors that spend, over 2 hours basically doing nothing, and even when they do something, it's just not all that exciting. So yes. I think another one on the list that I think is really overrated.
Yes, very much so.
So number 15, Eyes Wide Shut. Um, uh, husband and wife passion project that fell flat for me.
I think it's famous because it's Kubrick's last movie, and that's what it's always gonna be. But yes, you're right, and I mean also saving a fledgling marriage, legit, like we're watching on screen, like truth behind the scenes kind of stuff. I think there. But also Kubrick's last movie, I think that's always what it's going to be. But yeah, the whole swinger dance stuff thing is going to
Yeah,
be.
well, I'm pretty sure Kubrick had a last bowel movement too, and that nobody reveres that. So, yeah, just not. I don't want to call it boring because there's parts of it that are interesting to watch, but it's one of those movies that it leaves you with the feeling that like you want to take a shower when you're done, like you just kind of feel dirty when you watch it. Like this is not something I want any part of, and the masks and things. I mean, no, just no. I'm gonna go no. Call it good.
Yeah, I don't know where to like literally put like the thumb on the pulse kind of thing in this movie because it's supposed to be artsy and deep, and like people throw parties based on this movie not with the intention of what the parties are. Like I've literally been to parties where it's like the masquerade party things where it's but yet nobody was actually swinging and stuff like that. Like everybody's like, oh, it's gonna be like a Eyes Wide Shut party, and I'm like, oh, okay.
So bring a mask
Right,
and a box of condoms. Great.
yeah, I'm wearing a mask and a tuxedo, and who am I banging? Like,
Yeah.
and then but they're like, oh no, it's not like that, and I'm like, you did watch the movie, right?
Well, yeah.
Like,
So then, what's the point? Yeah. I mean,
yeah, so you can't call it that. So yeah, no, it is. It's just I think it's executed poorly, and I think it's kind of sad. I mean, not that I'm not a Kubrick fanboy at all, but that being his last movie definitely leaves a question mark and an exclamation point.
Yeah, one of those footnote things. Yeah, definitely. All right, I can live with that. I can live with that. Now, number 14, I think, is arguably, I think, one of the biggest cult classics that our species of human has seen in film, whether people want to admit it or not. And that would be Office Space. Now, for me, in 1999, and the company that is featured there is called Innotech. Now, in 1999, I was working for a company called Innovex. So, I mean, and as the company was failing and falling apart, it just became kind of a running joke, you know. So I've got a connection to this movie that is very real life to me. But at the same time, I think, and a piece of it is its status too. I mean, everyone's had the apartment where your neighbors can hear you. Everyone has had the boss who's just an asshole and has no idea what's going on. And I think ultimately everybody has dreamed of just either stealing from their employer or burning the place down. So, I mean, everybody can connect with this film. I mean, and everybody knows what it is. Everyone knows the mumbling of the, they took my stapler. I mean, everybody knows that. It is in the zeitgeist now, and there's no taking it out. But I think at the same time, it also, and as time has gone on, it really takes a swing at corporate life and how bad it really can be. And I think Ron Livingston's character, when he has his, I always want to call it an awakening, but it's not really an awakening because he never woke up from being hypnotized. So it's actually kind of the opposite of an awakening. But when he has it, it's so freeing. And he just gets to go on doing what he wants, and he doesn't really give a fuck. And when he finds out that he doesn't give a fuck, it actually leads to a promotion. I mean, and like, who knew, right? So this one is going to be probably not top 3, but top 5 for sure of this list for me. I can watch this movie anytime. It's always funny. The humor holds up. The stereotypes of people hold up. Everyone has worked for a company where they've had a consultant come in, and then all of a sudden people are getting fired left and right. I mean, this is taking the corporate world and gutting it and laying it flat on a table and letting everybody see what's inside of it. So, I mean, for me, when it comes to comedies, like true comedy movies, this might be one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up. There's not a whole lot else I can say on that. But yeah, definitely the freedom. Like everyone, if you've ever had a job where you put that 2 weeks notice in and you know those 2 weeks you just don't give a fuck anymore because it doesn't really matter. You have no consequences. And having that freedom just to go into your job every day and just not have that stress of like what's going to happen to me or what do I have to do or what's my deadline and things like that. Like, and it actually makes you better working because you don't have that stress on you. Like that's the beauty of this movie. And then second, I just want to point out Mike Judge. I mean, with a finger on the pulse of things, like he did it with Idiocracy too. Like I think he has such a good mindset for ideas of making things work. Like he had to fight tooth and nail for the soundtrack for this movie. Like all the gangster rap and things like that are in this, like he wanted that. He goes, this is the soundtrack I want for this movie. And the studio fought him on that. And he goes, no, you don't understand. This has to be the soundtrack to the movie. Cause it's going to make it all make sense. And and it's just so funny that people don't realize that it's all hip hop and rap, the entire movie. And it's just kind of funny. Cause it's just very these guys just loose, stop giving a fuck, whatever, doing their thing. And the soundtrack kind of is it's like the soundtrack is its own character and you don't even realize it's there. That's what's amazing about it. They thought it would be offensive. They thought it would the studio thought it would be offensive and in the front, but actually it stays in the background the whole time as its own character. It pushes that movie forward.
Well, but for the year that this was too, the soundtrack was definitely a multicultural glue. that was holding society together, because there were white guys going to their corporate jobs, listening to gangster rap in their cars. It was happening. It was actually happening. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to fight for that was not only the best use of your time, it was brilliant too, because it's a big piece of what held this movie together. Because if you take this movie, and honestly, for a lot of the pivotal moments of the film, if you changed what was playing in the background, it would be a completely different tone, you know? But it was a great way of taking, gangster rap and the hip hop of the time, which you wouldn't normally associate with a corporate culture, and kind of expelling people's just, anger at being stuck in a little box all day long, I mean, for me, I'm stuck in a little box all day long. I still am at 50 years old. How pathetic is that? But I've also weathered the storm, and I'm to the point where I can get up and leave my little box whenever I want. Or if I don't come to my box for a day, it's like, whatever. He's been here forever. Nobody cares, So what you know about the box in 1999 compared to what I know about the box now in 2024, there is upside to it. But this movie does a great job of almost kind of showing you the downside, but also the potential. It does both at the same time. I mean, and that's probably what is so great about it. Well, so we don't turn the episode into Office Space, because that would be really easy to do. Let's go on to number 13. And now, this is one of the movies where... Okay, well, it's South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut. Now, do I think the movie is funny at the time? Yes, it was extremely funny. But this is that super irreverent humor now that at my age doesn't appeal to me anymore. I used to think South Park was funny. I don't sit down and watch it anymore. It just doesn't appeal to me, and maybe it's an intellectual level, maybe the fact that it's animated. I think that's a big piece of it, unfortunately. I don't really dig animated anymore. If it has a zombie in it, I'll watch it. But pretty much if it doesn't, then you're on your own, except for the Studio Ghibli stuff that my wife forces me to watch. But generally speaking, animated just doesn't appeal to me anymore. But this was some funny shit, blaming Canada for things, and and Big Gay Al was funny, and there was just a lot of things. But I think there's a lot of things now in this movie, and maybe South Park is still doing them and I don't know it, because I don't watch it. But a lot of this stuff feels like things you couldn't do anymore, because our society is kind of swayed to one end of the meter so far that things are not quote unquote funny anymore. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised at its position on this list, that it's held up over the years and people still think it's that funny. Because I can remember laughing my ass off at the time, but something tells me if I were to watch this now, I'd just kind of go, ooh, and I'd probably turn it off.
I'm kind of the opposite in that I did not get on the South Park train until later. It wasn't until like the 2010s when I actually started watching South Park and had to go back and watch everything, kind of catch up. So the early stuff has always been kind of meh to me. But now now that I've pretty much caught up, I haven't watched the last few seasons, the last couple of years, but up through season 20 or 21, whatever it is. I've kept up with it, but I had to go back and watch. So when I watched Bigger, Longer, Uncut, I actually thought it was very funny, but I had to kind of catch up on the show and then watch the movie. So I saw it years later. It wasn't, I couldn't tell you what year it was when I actually saw it for the first time, but I was not on the South Park train until probably 2010 or something like that.
Okay. And so do you watch it now? Do you stay current?
I have not watched the last probably 3 seasons or whatever. I don't know. I'd have to look at it to see where I left off.
Okay, so is it safe to say that at one point we each found it funny, but neither one of us is really an aficionado?
Aficionado as far as I remember all the old stuff, but as far as most recent things, I haven't probably watched the last 3 seasons, I guess you'd
Okay.
say. I haven't watched it since, I don't want to compare it in terms of presidencies, but like the Biden administration. I probably haven't watched since COVID.
Okay. Okay. So good irreverent humor. How well it stands up. Maybe more time needs to pass before we really know. Sound fair? Okay.
Yeah, good assessment.
So number 12, being John Malkovich. Now, this one's in my top 10 for sure. I thought this movie, it's an intellectual masterpiece. That said, I also understand that sometimes intellectual masterpieces can be boring as hell. So it does have that in there. So this is a mindset movie. Kind of depends on where you're at and what you're trying to do with your life and how you're feeling. When I'm feeling sort of blue and I don't know where my life is going, this movie is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. If I'm hitting my A game and firing on all cylinders, there's no reason to watch this. So it's one of those weird dichotomy movies. Overall, if I'm pressed, I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliantly done. It's brilliantly shot. Imagining that you're sliding into the head of John Malkovich and you get to control him for a day. Because John Malkovich is he's a masterful actor. He really is. He doesn't do enough. I wish he did more these days so I could see him more often. But this one, it really is a masterpiece, I think.
Pretty much the same. I agree with all that. I love this movie. I think it's misunderstood, and I think a lot of people don't get it when they watch it through the first time, or don't know what they're going to be watching when they watch it, because it's kind of a mind fuck. I get it. But yeah, no, also just the cast. Catherine Keener, Cameron Diaz, John Cusack. John Malkovich, obviously. Just great performances all around. It's just it's an oddball movie, but it's fun if you take the time to pay attention. And the improv stuff in that movie too is great. Like, the behind the scenes things. There's some really funny stories behind that movie. But no, I just find it fascinating. And the fact that John Malkovich would agree to that anyway, such a meta project, like it's just kind of funny in general. It may be ahead of its time. Like it's a thing where now, like, what's the Nicolas Cage one that just came out, the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, or like that.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that's like, people look at that and they're just like, haha, that's so funny. It's Nicolas Cage kind of being Nicolas Cage. And it's like, well, John Malkovich was John Malkovich in his own movie.
Well,
it's kind
exactly.
of its own
Under the umbrella of a drama versus the umbrella of a comedy, but still sort of doing the same thing,
right.
Understanding who you are as a person as an actor. And
in the greater scheme of things. Yeah.
Well, exactly. But realizing that life and the world is a bigger place than, even though you're somebody who's famous and has lots of money and all these things and everybody knows your name, there's still something bigger out there, and it would take a very small thing to change you, and with being John Malkovich, knowing that your brain is effectively a playground slide and anybody can get in there, because of this little tiny door. That in and of itself, I think, is scary as hell. And that's one of the things I always took from that movie, is that's scary as hell, that you could be somebody different tomorrow if that existed. But metaphorically, I've always thought that the movie was about going out and trying to be the best you that you could be, and how a lot of people struggle with being the best them that they could be. But having this doorway into being the best somebody else is just crazy when you think about it.
Right. Well, it's also back to those people being uncomfortable being themselves and wanting to live in someone else's skin.
Yep,
that's
absolutely.
also a theme of that movie, obviously, because sexuality is a theme in that movie and things like that. So, being comfortable in your own skin and wanting for a second to just, if I was that person, it would take this edge or this nervousness or this stress off of me or whatever. I could be myself if I, was in this person's skin, kind of thing.
Well, and overall, the constant struggle to figure out what myself is, and
Yeah.
how you peel the layers away. And I mean, I would hazard to guess that most people probably go to their deathbed probably not knowing who they actually are. But I think a lot of that comes out of anxiety and fear of just not wanting to express what you want to express. Now, I'm not saying go out in the world and espouse hate and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying just be who you are. Yes, it might make some people afraid, but if those people run away, then so be it. They weren't meant to be there anyway. And I think this movie does a good job of trying to relay that message. So number 11. This one might end up in my top 3. It's very possible. The Boondock Saints. Now, this is a movie that I have loved from the minute that it came out. The absolute minute. William Dafoe is fucking brilliant. This movie is brilliant. Sean Patrick Flannery, not somebody who everybody knows. Like, if somebody said the name, people would go, well, I know he was in something recently. What was he in? Well, he was in Nefarious recently. That's what he was in. And Norman Reedus, at this point, I think everybody knows who he is. But this movie is so full of action. It is so full of brutality. It has so much energy. Two Irish guys effectively trying to save the local Irish bar from the Russian mafia. And then, the wayward federal agent trying to figure out who's killing all these people and what he goes through and his antics and and almost like dance routines that he goes through when he's trying to solve it. The whole thing is nothing short of brilliant, but it's brilliance based on what is effectively two gun-toting buffoons that really don't know what they're doing. And I cannot think of what's the old guy's name? Is that David Rocco, the old guy? It's not David Rocco, is it?
No. Rocco's the younger dude that's working for the Russian mafia, but is friends with them. He's the guy who's
literally isn't it literally called Rocco? Isn't his name literally Rocco?
His name is Rocco. His name is Rocco. You're thinking of oh gosh, I can't.
I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it because it's just it bears repeating. Billy Connolly.
Yes, Billy Connolly. Oh.
Yeah. Like I have guns in my collection that I've modeled after the Boondock Saints pistols. Put it that way. Because I just think it's so the movie is so good and it's so part of sort of me growing up and trying to fight the unjust things in the world, whether it's the Russian mafia or whatever it may be, and just the whole thing is about setting things not so much even right, but setting them at balanced, so at least everyone's got a fair shot. And how one group might have too much power, and so then things aren't balanced. And it's a movie that I love. I'm going to love till the day I die. I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah. I remember this is another one that I watched on DVD at home. I did not see in theaters or anything. It was a couple of years after it came out that I had heard by word of mouth that I needed to see this movie, and I watched it. And I loved it. It's a good time. It's doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a short movie. And it's fun. This was, kind of one of those fun vengeance movies. This is before John Wick. This is before The Equalizer. This is before Taken. Like, this was your badass movie that people looked up to and were like, oh, these guys just fucking took justice in their own hands, kind of thing. So yeah, it's if you're into that, that's what it is. And it's a good movie. Is it in my top 3? I don't know. This is a stacked class. But I'll never say anything bad about it. It's a great movie. The music too. Once again, like Willem Dafoe, like you said, I love when he puts the headphones in or the earbuds in, and he's like listening to classical music while he's like imagining the firefight, and then they're actually showing
he's dancing. And he's like, boom. Yeah, it's so.
Yeah, and they're showing it's so well directed. It really is. It's more than just a vengeance movie kind of thing. It actually has a lot of really good directed scenes.
Well, completely agree. Our number 10, October Sky. I have no idea.
I don't know why that's number 10. Nope.
Okay. All right. Number 9, The Insider. Another one. I don't honestly think I've seen it.
I don't think I have either.
Well, there we go. That makes that easy. Number 8, something I know we both seen, Toy Story 2. So this was the movie in my household that dethroned The Lion King. So ultimately, I have to have some respect for it. Again, it's animated, not my jam usually, but at this point, I had a 5-year-old, so it's like, well, you know, we have to have it, and we have to have all the related toys and the lunch boxes and all the other accoutrements that come with it. Um, Fun movie, fun to watch, funny, still sort of heartwarming. You know, there's always a story to be told. Not as good as the first Toy Story by any stretch, but this did dethrone The Lion King and then eventually drug Toy Story in to be the top movie in my house, at least until my second kid was born, and then everything went off the rails from there. But overall, a good film, fun to watch.
It's kind of off the radar. I saw the first Toy Story in theaters. And then by this time, like I said, at this point in my life, I'm straight jock. I don't listen, like I literally only watch History Channel and ESPN at this point in my life, other than movies. So I kind of grown out of that, and I didn't see this one until way later, and it didn't hit the same when you're seeing it. I guess later on, I don't have kids, and I was an adult, and I was just like, all right. Still, the first Toy Story will always be my go to on that.
No, absolutely. Completely agree with you. Number 7, Magnolia. Um, I was at an age where I was having kids and I was trying to figure out my own life, and this movie just didn't even remotely appeal to me. So I know I saw it, don't remember a damn thing about it, and couldn't care less.
That's completely the same. I saw it and I don't remember it.
Okay, so probably doesn't deserve a spot, but apparently enough people thought so we'll just leave it at that. Number 6, The Iron Giant. Now, this one, as my oldest got a little older, this one did creep into the regular rotation. Very fun movie. Probably one of the first kids movies where they really tried to factor in. And this miffs me a little bit, but it's like, hey, there's this thing and the government's coming for it, And so that was one of it. So it's a good movie, but I don't like preaching to children about things that the government is doing. I think the movie making people should stay the hell out of that and let the parents decide what they're going to tell their kids and what they shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to a degree it's animated ET at that point, but
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I look at this movie. Like a lot of people get teared up over it, and it's like all nostalgia, and it's like in their in their memory. I didn't really get too caught up in this. I watched it and I was just like, okay, it's fine. It is what it is. I've seen sadder stories. I mean, it's not super unique in what its storytelling is, honestly. I mean, it's kind of a story that's been told a bunch. Sorry to ruin people's childhoods there if they're listening, but it's not that special to me, and I don't get teared up over it.
Yeah.
It's actually just kind of mediocre to me.
Yeah, I'm the same, but I also recognize the fact that it does have a cult following, so it kind of is what it is. Yeah. So here we are, the top 5. Now we can do one of two things. We can get deep on this, or we can say that these are the top 5, and then sort of give our top 3, if you want to. I don't think dissecting these top 5 is right now is going to do us a lot of justice. I think we need to save it for like the best one. But I'll roll through them. If you've got some points, please make them. I'll try to keep mine brief. And we'll just see how it goes. Number 5, The Sixth Sense. Yeah, the first time I saw it, and then I found out that Bruce Willis was dead, yeah, I was blown away. After that, I didn't care anymore. So, was it a good movie the first time? Yes. The rewatchability is effectively 0. So, I'm going to stop there. See what you think.
Similar. I will disagree that I think the rewatchability is actually still. I think it's comfort. It's got. Well, if you're dark and kind of creepy by nature, like we are, maybe there's a certain comfort in creepier movies like that. So I can still consider it a comfort movie just to have on in the background. So I think I'll give it rewatchability. I'll give it 1 more star than you give it. Put it that way, okay. For rewatchability. But yeah, I mean, first time I saw it in theaters, and I was like, it was good. It was shocking at times too. Like the theater experience actually does take you aback several times. There's some, some jump scares. There's some, things you're not ready for. Even the gunshot at the very beginning of the movie, and was it Donnie Wahlberg looking all emaciated and everything?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, there's some genuinely unnerving parts of that movie, especially for me when I was, like I said, when I saw this movie, I was 13 or 14. I think I was 14 at the time, and still very sheltered, so I wasn't like the creep that I am now. So yeah, I mean, there's some like there's some sections that were generally kind of unnerving. The people hanging in the school, where they hung the witches or whatever. Like, there's some cool in that movie. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but yeah, no, I mean, definitely deserves, I think, to be in top 599, and I think it deserves its place in movie history as being, just because it's once there's a spoiler. I mean, look at Psycho. Everyone knows the end of Psycho. Everyone knows the spoiler in that now. But when it was in 1960 or whatever, that was like mind blowing. Like, people lost their shit when they saw that movie the first time. So we're not going to say that's like one of the that's still going to be in the top 100 of all time. So yeah, I think Sixth Sense totally deserves that place.
All right, very fair, very fair. Well, speaking of dark and creepy, number 4, American Beauty. So this movie I actually put up next to the movie Election, in overall idea. Delivery is very different, but the idea is very much the same. And it's midlife crisis. It's all these different things. And then a bunch of kids trying to figure out who they are. Now, I know this one it has the actor who shall not be named because he's in the midst of, but apparently he's got clear of all that. Now he's got some new projects coming out. So say what you want. I've always found his acting to be very good. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and whatever else. Thora Birch in this one, I know that when she filmed her nude scene, she was 17 years old. So they had to get some sort of special dispensation from her parents and maybe even like a court or something for her to show her boobs on camera, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because sexuality is such a big part of our culture. It's like, okay, whatever. Overall, I want to put this one in my top 3. I might actually just to kind of fuck with things, because that's what I like to do. But pretty close to a masterpiece. I mean, really pretty close to a masterpiece. Subject matter, everyone understands, being married and where am I going and what am I doing and what social constructs am I trying to uphold so the neighbors don't laugh at me. But at the same time, it's like, how can I be better and what can I change? I mean, and it's a great social commentary movie. I think it holds up well, and there really aren't any subjects in this that have, gone the way of the dodo. I think everyone can really relate to this.
Yeah, when this movie came out, I saw it on DVD not too long, like a year or two after it came out. I saw a lot of movies because I had one of my best friend actually I grew up with. He worked at a Hollywood Video, and so he would just bring movies over every weekend, and we'd just eat popcorn and watch movies. That's what we did. And I remember the problem I had with this movie wasn't with anything to do with subject matter or anything like that. Like it is good. Problem for me was it was built up so much that when I finally watched it, like it wasn't that it was lackluster. It was just like people had built it up as being this like life-changing thing. And when I watched it, I was like, that was really good, but I thought it was going to make me different or think something different or change my life. And it really didn't do that. Like for me, there's so much, it is very artistic and it's well shot and it's well, like I like the actor who shall not be named, kind of inner thought, his like imaginings and his like where it cuts to like kind of his own like thoughts and like dreams and things like that.
Yeah, his inner monologue is great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's amazing. But so much of the real life action that's going on, especially with like Thor Birch and the boyfriend with the balloon and all that crap, or the bag or whatever. That's not the balloon, the bag. Like stuff like that was just boring. And I mean, some of it I got it, but I guess I didn't get it because I wasn't that kind of teenager. I can relate to it more now than I could when I was that age, I guess, because I didn't grow up in that same kind of like, I don't know, environment. And I don't know. I just didn't have anything to one compare it to at the time. And I was probably too short-sighted and too young to really get it and put myself into the mind of another teenager that grew up different. So that's the best way to describe.
That's interesting. I think that's an era bias is what that is. It's an era bias. Yeah. And I think that's fair. I think it's very fair. Okay.
But but that does not take away from the fact that it's an amazing movie. It really is a good movie. And the ending, no spoilers for those who haven't seen it, but yes, very powerful, very good.
Yeah. Number 3 is The Green Mile. Now, okay, I'm just gonna say this, and it's gonna be unpopular. I am absolutely a Stephen King apologist. I love everything Stephen King. I think this movie is very overrated. Very overrated. I think Michael Clarke Duncan is fantastic in it. I think his performance is masterful. The rest of the movie is just kind of like, you know. I'm a huge fan of David Morris. I'm a huge fan of his. I love everything that he does. I think he's a super underrated character actor. But overall, the movie's super overrated. I don't think it deserves its place.
Same. I agree. I wish the same amount of love and attention that went into this movie had gone into The Gunslinger.
Oh, fuck. Don't even get me started. Don't even know.
Sorry, The Dark Tower. I should have said The Dark Tower because they named the movie The Dark Tower. It should have been just been The Gunslinger.
Don't even. Bad Clark. Bad Clark. Oh.
Sorry. We're on the same page. You know where I'm getting at.
I do. And yeah. So let's just.
I'm not going to talk anymore about that. But
let's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, as far as the Stephen King catalog goes, there's things that have been done very well, and there's things that have been done very poorly. And Green Mile is done very well. I like it, but there's other stories I wish were done better.
Yes,
it's not Shawshank's better still.
Well, that's okay. I can't do it. Okay, I'm just gonna stop. Okay, I can't. Our number 2 is The Matrix. So I don't need a lot of discussion on The Matrix. The first Matrix is a film perfection. It really is. It's perfection. And it's coming into call it the computer era. People are starting to get cell phones. And it is your worst fear realized on screen. I almost consider The Matrix a horror movie, although I know a lot of people don't. I almost consider it a horror movie. But The hard part for me is that I want to put it in my top 3, but I also don't want to dissect it because I don't think I'll do it justice because it's so brilliant. Um, I'll stop there. I'll stop with that because it's brilliance on every level.
Yes, The Matrix is great. I'm sad that it's a victim of it's going to get technologically phased out because it's like hard. It's going to be harder and harder for generations to look back on it and understand. But I think it sets groundwork for stuff like Inception, even like living in a dream world, living in a world without barriers, as long as you are able to manipulate those barriers and understand that you are in control and they aren't in control. I like that idea. So like I kind of wonder if Nolan was inspired at all by The Matrix doing Inception. Probably not, but I think of it like that. I think of like living in The Matrix as almost like being in a dream world. And I think that's the best way to update it, kind of thing. Like I didn't watch the most recent Matrix sequel, whatever it was, whatever.
You didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything. It was garbage.
Yeah, I heard it was just like a rehash of everything. But anyway, I didn't care.
Yep.
The original Matrix was a cultural milestone at the time when it came out. It was a big deal, and I'm sad that I think as time goes on, it's going to get more and more obsolete. Like literally, just generations aren't going to understand. I mean, can you think of a movie like off like the top of your head, like something from the '60s that we just can't bend our mind around because it's like, oh, well, we can't really, all that doesn't make sense because why wouldn't you just do this?
From the 60s, probably not. But then I think about movies like, say, 2001 that I think are still a little bit foreboding. I think of At Least the Story, 1984. So I think there are things out there, but I think The Matrix can be put up with those, where it, from an intellectual level, it does make you think about where you are, what you're living, is what I'm doing real, and moreover, is this my actual fate, and how much control do I actually have? So I think that's what I think. I think The Matrix will stay as part of the, call it the cinema / existential / intellectual zeitgeist because of what it does with that. Now I can see the technology piece of it sort of obsoleting out, but at the same time, we've got people that are living underground in ships that can fly through electromagnets and things like that, and it's like, we're still in a place where we have a company trying to get the flying car off the ground. So there's a piece of it that I think it didn't overstay its relevance, and it's still kind of going. Where it ends up, yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know, but I think it's going to remain part of the conversation for a long time.
As long as people keep bringing it up. I think that's the thing.
Fair enough. Number 1. Any guesses, Clark, on what the top...
I know. I'm almost certain I know what it is.
Well, I'm going to introduce the movie, and then I will let you talk for a minute, and mostly because I'm old and I have to pee again. But I think you're going to have some interesting things to say. So 1999, the number 1 movie, according to our friends at IMDb, is Fight Club. And Clark, we're already breaking the first rule, and we're talking about Fight Club.
We're going to talk about it. Oh, my God. All right, so I had talked some shit earlier on Girl Interrupted being like, I guess this whole like misunderstood by feminists or misunderstood also by mental illness and people taking that and running with it and being like, it's cute and it's fun and it should be something celebrated and you should make it a Halloween costume. Well, Fight Club is the exact same thing, but for testosterone. I think a lot of people miss the point of this movie, and there is nothing to say bad about how it is acted, shot, directed. Like everything in this movie is done perfect. The problem is a toxic fan base and people completely misconstruing the I guess the original intent of this movie and the message, and that's probably my biggest problem with it. And I think it's probably the most overrated movie, possibly of the '90s, not just 1999. Um, uh, yeah, in short, that's kind of what I feel about it. Once again, I can't say enough praise for the actual actors involved. But yeah, it just bothers me on a certain level having people just like I said watch it for what it is on surface value, and that's my biggest problem with Fight Club, and I think that's why it doesn't deserve to be number one, I guess, which these rankings don't matter anyway. But is it a good movie? Yes, it's a very good movie. Is it a misunderstood movie? Yes, it's probably the most misunderstood movie in cinema history, maybe. So that's where I stand on it.
Well, okay. So I think all of that is both fair and lopsided at the same time. And yeah, I get it. The people love the fact that, you know, this movie is sort of attacking the man and going after this horrid capitalist system that we live in, even though it is what helps everything function every single day. So why people are, you know, the same people that shout down capitalism, in their other hand, there's a Starbucks. You know, it's like, come on, you fucking pick your side, you fucking pink-haired douchebag. I mean, just pick a side. Um, you know, I think
rich, so I'm the new rich.
Well, exactly. I hate the rich because I'm not. And why am I not? Well, because I haven't worked for it. So it's like, well, it's overall, it's a little bit misleading. Now, at the same time, because there was a point where, you know, I mean, you know me, I'm a 50-year-old white collar worker who's also covered in tattoos, has a healthy skepticism for anyone or anything that says it's good for me. And, you know, I kind of always want to push the idea of what's normal. Now, my idea of what's normal and what someone else's idea of normal is obviously going to be completely different things. But at the same time, I love how this movie just strikes at the core of everybody being a goldfish and just swimming around their bowl and accepting what they see around them. I love that about this movie. Does it deserve to be number one for the year? For a lot of reasons, I would say, yeah, it probably does. There's a couple of reasons that I would say no, and this is 50-year-old me versus 25-year-old me at the time, or 20. How the hell old was I? Was I 20? I might have been 25. I was 25. Perfect. Hey, half it. Ultimately, while I know that sometimes it takes strong actions to bring about change, the problem that I have with this movie these days is the level of violence that these people are willing to go to try to quote unquote affect change. I mean, they're basically building a cult of people that are poorly understood, undereducated, and ill-informed, right? I mean, and we're seeing that happen today. So in effect, it's a little bit scary. But at the same time, there is a piece of me that gets it. I just wish we could have better conversations and better understanding about a lot of the way the world is, and then we wouldn't have to resort to violence against each other. So Fight Club is number one. Clark, we're at that drum roll time where we need to collectively pick our top three, and that's my beer opening, and give our faithful listeners something that they can fight about until we get to week 4.
I want to bring up a couple of honorable mentions that came out this year that did not make the top 50.
Well,
there's a couple of movies here.
Doesn't have to be in the top 50 for us to pick it. Remember that. Does not have to be there.
But one of them I'm not going to put in my top 3, but okay. I want to point it out anyway. It's one of my favorite dark comedies ever, and that's Ravenous.
Okay. Probably, I know we've talked about it.
One of
I'm
my
trying
favorite
to.
movies that is a victim of a terrible trailer because of the 90s
Oh,
and
yeah.
terrible marketing and a terrible trailer. They marketed it as a serious horror movie, and it's actually a dark comedy. And it's I think it's a great movie. Guy Pearce, Robert Carlyle, which Robert Carlyle to me,
Mm.
Robert Carlyle and Stephen Lang are two of the best character actors of all time. And the only reason their name isn't Gary Oldman is the reason they're not the best uh, character actors of all time. So I actually put them in the top 3 probably of all time. So, but that's just a movie I wanted to point out. Another movie that's another sports movie other than Any Given Sunday is For Love of the Game.
Mm.
Kevin Costner, amazing movie, and especially me being a baseball player, pitcher, and knowing actually what that's actually like. That movie is actually incredibly realistic as far as what it's like to be on a mound pitching a baseball game and what your mind is actually doing during that. Because sometimes it's all over the place and you're not even thinking about like it's so hyper focused on what you're doing and what the next pitch is. And then sometimes it's like the interaction you had with this person earlier in the day. And like sometimes you don't even realize like you can be sitting in the dugout and literally they'll be like, oh, it's the 7th inning. And it's just like, really? Is it? I don't even remember pitching the last 3 innings. Like, because you can be so in the zone, and by in the zone, you don't even have to be present mentally. Sometimes you're just going through mechanical motions and you're actually thinking about so many different things. So I think that movie does a brilliant way of interlacing his kind of reflection of like what he's thinking about versus him actually being present in the game at the moment. And it's actually really, really fascinating look into being in a high stress sports situation and people thinking that you're like hyper focused, and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're a million miles away and you're just going through motions and you're being successful. And I just think that's a great movie.
You know, I've seen the movie. It definitely did not touch me the way that it touched you. Um, but now I'm gonna have to go ahead and add it because I'm gonna have to watch it again because usually from my place, um, if you think it's good, I usually am gonna think it's good. Um, I do have one quick honorable mention before you get to your next one. Um, and that is The Bone Collector.
Yes. Ooh, Jeffrey Deaver.
I yeah, I love The Bone Collector. Um, it it's one of those movies I think that it does a great job of really putting limitations right in front of your face, but then also helping you elevate yourself past those limitations. Um, which I think is fantastic. Because I mean, ultimately, there's people every day that live with limitations, whether they're real or perceived. They can still be limitations, right? Anxiety can be a limitation, even though anxiety is. And I'm going to say this always, and I'm not trying to judge anybody, but I think anxiety is perceived. I think it's something that you do to yourself, but it's still a limitation. It can still hold you back. So I love what that movie does with the limitations, but I also love the sort of sleuthing / clue vibe that it gives you. It's a great watch. Now it's dark. It's definitely dark. It's definitely a little broody. But I think it's a really good movie. So, and I have one more, but it's like super dark and deep, but I'll let you get to your next one.
Well, no, I just wanted to mention something on Bone Collector. I don't have another one actually really I want to bring up, but Bone Collector, I also want to mention, you say limitations being a theme of that. It's not only limitations for the characters, but limitations for the actors themselves. I think is fascinating in that movie because if you think about it, you have Angelina Jolie, who is a very downplayed sexually, like she's not sexualized at all in that movie.
Nope.
So they take all that away from her, and it's just based on her actually acting ability and all that stuff. And then you have Denzel Washington, who we think of being more of an action guy and doing stuff, and he's limited to a hospital bed, and he's in basically under care the entire time. So you take away all his physicality, and it's just his acting ability alone. So I find that fascinating that you take away kind of two important aspects of two very big actors. I won't even say in their prime, but like kind of in, I mean, Denzel's prime has been since 1989. So he's really,
Well,
he
exactly.
hasn't, yeah, he hasn't slipped out of his prime yet. He's still in it. But you know, Angelina Jolie kind of at the kind of starting in that crest of her popularity. Um, and I find that fascinating that that whole movie depends on their acting ability alone, and it takes away gimmicky strengths.
Well, and to that point, this is more current, but have you seen No One Will Save You?
No.
Okay. Do you know who Caitlin Dever is?
Mm.
Okay. Well, Google her and then watch that movie and realize that she was in a nearly 2 hour long movie where she had 0 words of dialogue and extended a performance that was everything. It was heartbreaking. It was touching. It was sympathetic. It was brutal at times. And this is all with no dialogue at all. Absolutely a brilliant movie. So it's kind of the same vein as that. So to round out 99, I have one, and I'm not even going to call it an honorable mention. It's in my top 3, but it was not on the list. And it's controversial as hell. It's based on a true story. It covers topics that people find delicate these days, but it's Boys Don't Cry. That movie is a brilliant punch in the asshole masterpiece of a film. Hilary Swank and Chloe Sevigny, I believe is how it's pronounced. Masterful performances. I'm just gonna go ahead right now and call it. I'm gonna put that one in my top 3 because that movie is so good. It's not an easy watch. It is not easy subject matter. Don't pop up popcorn and think you're gonna have fun. Don't, because you're not. It's nothing short of brutal. And I think it's especially poignant in this day and age where people are working so hard to figure out who they are that it's such a great telling of the story, telling of the pitfalls, telling of the misunderstanding, telling of trying to fit in. It's just absolutely great. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that one in my top 3. So I would suggest that maybe you give us your first top 3.
So my number 3 of my top 3, giving this a lot of thought because I don't want to mix them up like I want. I think I'm actually going to go with, it's going to be a tough one. I'm actually going to give it to, my number 3 is actually going to be The Matrix.
Okay. The Matrix. Oh boy. That's going to be it's going to be popular. We might end up talking about The Matrix, just so you know. But that's okay because it is also one of those movies that is it's a masterpiece. For my second, I am going to go with a movie that I think is not talked about enough, and people don't reflect enough on, but really should. And I'm going to go with Election. It's a great movie. It talks a lot about actual problems that people face, and everything from people trying to get pregnant and their infertility, people trying to plan for their future, people trying to do what's right and how it becomes a slippery slope and turns into what's wrong. It's a great movie, great acting, really underrated. I think people need to watch it. Your numero dos.
My number 2, I'm going to give an honorable mention shout out to Galaxy Quest because I love it and it makes me feel good inside and it makes me smile. But nothing in 1999 makes me happier or makes me smile or makes me more feel good than The Mummy.
The Mummy. Excellent.
Mummy is going to be my number 2.
Excellent. It's a great film. There's no getting around it, and it's one of those movies that when you start to just talk about it and break it down, um, it, it's just kind of covered in excellence. And I will argue that there are a couple of scenes in the special effects, especially the sand guy coming across, that fall a little short today. But for back then, were just brilliant. So that could be a fun one to discuss. Now, I'm really torn on my last one here. There are so many things I want to pick from, but I ultimately have to go with the one that I am really open to rewatching every time, and that's going to be the Boondock Saints.
Quality. It's quality.
It just gets me every single time. It's deep, it's introspective, but it's also fun. It has a lot of the murders that we'd all like to commit and just can't. So I think it's fair. I think it's fair.
Yeah, no complaints there. That is quality. I like the diversity we got between our threes here.
All right.
So rounding out my number one, man, I thought it would be more of a contest for me, honestly, but the more I think about it, the more I'm actually backing it. My number one movie for 1999 is going to be The Sixth Sense.
Really? The Sixth Sense. Okay.
Yep. Every time, I know we talked about rewatchability, but every time I see that movie on, and having spent a lot of time in Philadelphia, I can smell that movie, if that makes sense. Like, like in those old buildings, even the apartment buildings and stuff like that. Like I just know what it feels. I can feel the air watching that movie. I can smell the streets. I can smell those buildings. Like, I don't know what it is. Like that movie is very, very visceral to me. And I love ghost stories. And I think it's one of the best told ghost stories. Definitely in modern, history, but maybe of all time. So.
Well, outstanding. So we have our week 1 top 6, which we will post in our Discord, and we will let our loyal listeners decide via a poll what we're going to talk about for week 4. Now, we should discuss week 2, and I believe for week 2, Clark, you're up first. Do you have an idea now, or would you like to surprise me in a week?
Oh, we're going to make it a surprise. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, let me know a day ahead of time so I can watch it. but so week 2 will be Clark forcibly shoving a movie down my throat, and obviously week 3 will be me forcibly shoving a movie or possibly a brew handle down Clark's throat. Week 4 will be our discussion about our pick from the top 6 tonight. So it's going to be fun. I am looking forward to it. I definitely think that it's real, and it's almost certainly effing weird.
Thank you again for listening, and we appreciate you every time. Weird.